Hey folks, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video today is going to be for the Explorer Best of 1 format. We've covered standard Best of 1, Best of 3. We'll do Historic a little later in the week since it's the qualifier weekend for Historic. And then we'll see if there's enough data for a drop of Explorer Best 3. But we try to cover it once a week. All the content is in the playlist if you want to get any of those particular videos. And we get the data from UntapkedGG, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena Client, tracks win rate, data, a whole bunch of cool stuff. Link is in the video description if you want to track your data and use the tool. I'll paste all these deck lists for your own kind of quick access. Timestamps are in there. And just a quick note before we jump into it. I'm closing in on 9,000 subs. We're still trying to hit 10,000 subs by the end of June. If you like this content, free, easy way to help out the channel is to hit the sub button. Costs you nothing, helps out. If you have subbed, just drop a like, drop a comment. Whenever you're consuming content, if you do appreciate what the effort put into these types of things, a like goes a long way to help the algorithm. So enough going on that. Let's jump in. May 9th through June 6th. I tried doing a smaller window, but there wasn't a lot of variety. So I wanted to kind of do a bigger sample to see what kind of is happening as a snapshot for like the last month. We're looking Platinum into Mythic rank. Again, I just want a big population. This format has been kind of stale. So by doing so, we're trying to branch out and see what is potentially available in terms of decks. We actually got a pretty good variety by setting a wide net in this case. So surprisingly, Golgari Elves, so pretty much mono green elves splash black for 2 cards with a 66% win rate. So it's using a lot of 1 mana accelerants. You have Leaf Crown Visionary, which is a Lord plus potential card draw. You have Elvish War Master, which makes more elves and is a mana sync ability. For 7 mana, all your elves get +2/2 in Death Touch till end of turn. Dwindling Elite represents 2 elf bodies. Finale of Devastation is kind of your big payoff. So you would just do X+10 or X10, and then all your creatures get +10/10 till end of turn, including haste. So a lot of power can be output in that regard there. You have Circle the Dream Druid, which makes a whole bunch of mana. So basically, Gaia's Cradle stuck to a creature. So the more creatures you make, the more mana you can make, and that fuels the finale. You also have Shaman of the Pack, which basically, when it enters the battlefield, deals damage to an opponent equal to the number of elves you control. Tyvar lets all your elves tap immediately, as though they have haste. Also lets you kind of mill to reanimate, and lets you do tap and tap shenanigans with your creatures as well. Collected Company kind of winds things up. A couple Nykthos for mana, and then Lair of the Hydra can also pump a bunch of mana into it as well. From there, we go to Mono Red Burn, 65% win rate. So this is more of an aggressively slanted Mono Red deck, burn-based. So generally these ones are better against like the Greasefang style decks, since you have a little bit of interaction. Even then, like you're not really hitting Greasefang outside of Wizard's Lightning at instant speed, so it can be a little tricky. The Angels matchup often feels terrible with this deck. So it's really a deck that could punish some decks, but if you end up running into your like Angels decks, you're probably going to have a bad time with this. But lots of burn. You have Light Up the Stage, Skewer the Critics, Yoshino deals extra damage, Spikefield Hazard for some reach, Play with Fire, Stomp from Bone Crusher. You have Get to Lava Runner, which is a hasty creature, Swiftspear, hasty creature, Soul Scar, so you have kind of a mini Wizards package to back it up. 19 land special, Light Up the Stage, adds some card advantage mixed in as well. From there, we go to Izzet Creativity, 62%. So there's a few different versions of Creativity. Some go to Atraxa, some go to the combo. This is kind of the more fair mid-range version, using Indomitable Creativity. So you basically create treasures, you Gearhawk into Creativity. You Creativity into Gearhawk. Which will then let you cast an instant sorcery. It's the only creature in your deck, so you always find it. Ideally, what you want to do is hit Magma Opus and free cast that. You can put the Gearhawks back into your hand with Volcanic Spike. A lot of kind of burn and interaction. Prismari Command helps, and then you have like the tempo elements with Divide by 0. Played this deck quite a bit. It actually has a terrible Angels matchup as well. You don't have really ways to deal 4 damage. You don't necessarily want to bounce their Righteous Valkyrie. It's potentially winnable, but you really have to tempo them out. It's often a pretty hard one to deal with. Because you have access to Divide by 0, you also have access to a wish board. This looks like it was ported over from best of 3. So what I would probably say is just go up like 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, and a start from scratch, like the Destroy Artifact one would probably be my choice. Just cut out these sideboard cards. I can try to make those changes into the deck list itself, but that's generally where you want to be with these wishboard packages. Then a cool deck. So Pioneer is all been about this Hogak situation, for those of you who know Hogak, but basically it's the new Convoke deck. So you're using Knight Errant of Eos and Venerated Loxodon to produce very large boards. In Pioneer, there's Reckless Bushwhacker, which can give haste to creatures. We don't have that in this case, so we're using Regal Leosaur. So it can mutate onto another creature, notably it has to be non-human, and it gives, when this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +2 until end of turn. So it's kind of an Anthem effect. So you're playing a bunch of cheap creatures, Ornithopters, you're doing things that create blood tokens or treasure, or like clues with these cards here. Then you can Gleeful Demolition to make a lot of creatures. If you play multiple spells, you get spells off the Clarion Spirit. Resolute Reinforcements makes multiple creatures. So there's a lot of ways to kind of go about that. Kind of flood the board and then Anthem your opponent and kill them that way there. So very explosive deck. From there, we go to Rakdos Midrange, 59%. It's just a shy under 60. It's kind of like the Jund of the deck. The Police, Fable deck, Shieldred, bunch of removal, Bone Crusher, Abrades, Fatal Pushes, Heartless Axe, Meat Hook Massacre main board now in this one too. Croxa's Graveyard Reanimation, or discard with like a graveyard effect. Interesting to see Misery Shadow and Hearse both being played main. Thoughtseize to disrupt like combo or just eat at the opponent's hand. Graveyard Trespassers, Graveyard Hate. You have the Blood Tithe Harvester Fable combo as well. And then like utility lands. You're really just grinding out your opponent this deck here. Kind of cutting some of the like Liliana's, some of the like Glut on the top end, and then just kind of closing out at Shieldred with a lot of 2-for-1 value. We then pivot to Selesnya Auras. So this is an interesting deck. So you're using like things like Light Paws, which can then, when you target it, tutor up other auras. You're using Shram for card advantage. This version is also playing Hushbringer to shut off enter the battlefield style effects. Really good against like Angels, things like that. And then you also have like the Generous Visitors in here to pump up your team with protection from both Selfless Savior and Skrelv. You have things like Sentinel's Eyes for vigilance and a boost. Griffspoon for flying. Ethereal Armor is basically a 1-mana all that glitters that gives first strike. Cartouche gives you first strike, a bump, and another creature. Audacity for trample. Warbriar Blessing as a fight effect. Runa Substance for lifelink. Heliod's Punishment is removal, and then another all that glitter style effect. So generally these decks, I personally don't like them. A lot of people do, but I always end up drawing like the wrong half, or I find these games you either run away with it or they interact with you a couple times and then you got a handful of auras with nothing to do with them. I like my aggro decks to be a little bit less contingent on drawing certain cards. Then we go to Mono White Humans, 58% win rate. So back onto the Brave the Elements plan over the ossification. We got the addition of Coppercoat Vanguard. Pumps up the power of all your creatures by 1 since they're all humans. Gives them ward. Thalia's Lieutenant puts a bunch of counters on things. Adeline goes wide, puts more humans into play for the Thalias. The Adeline tokens also now get to attack as 2/1s. Brutal Cathar is some removal. The Brave the Elements is nice because you give your creatures pseudo unblockable against a monocolored board. Protection with like Dauntless Bodyguard, and then a bunch of utility lands as well mixed into the mana base. We'll pivot then to said Selesnya Angels, 58% win rate. So this is kind of a slower mid-range deck that could beat up on some decks. Very bad against like control, but against like the mono red deck, stuff like that can kind of pop off. This version is looking to leverage both Kyla's Reconstruction and Collected Company to gain you a bunch of life. You have Bishop of Wings as well as Righteous Valkyrie that trigger life gain synergies from Angels entering the battlefield. And ideally you want to gain 5 life in a turn cycle so that your Resplendent Angel pops off and then creates another Angel, then you gain more life. You have removal with Skyclave Apparition kind of mixed into there as well. The seldomly played Cave of the Frost Dragon, also hiding out in the mana base there. We then go to Azorius Control, 58%. So this version's on temporary lockdown for a lot of the aggressive decks, Verdict, as well as Farewell. Your Planeswalker package, Teferi and Wandering Emperor. Shark Typhoon is another additional win condition, along with all of the Storm Giants, or even just Castle Ardenvale over time. Counter spells and Veto make disappear, Absorb. You see Sot coming as a split because you can foretell this early, and then with Teferi you untap 2 lands, so you have access to counterspell mana. Draw package, similar case. 3 Memory Deluge, Behold the Multiverse, another card that can be foretold early, and then cast with Teferi's untap. Fateful Absence also fills in a 2 mana removal spell option. And then lastly, Greasefang, 57%. Basically this deck you want to self-mill yourself. Ideally put into your graveyard one of these vehicles, cast Greasefang, reanimate them, crew it right away, they get haste. You attack with Parhelion, it's 13 damage in the air. Plus you then get left behind 2 4/4 Angels with Vigilance. So that oftentimes wins the game. This version here is on 4 Rafine's Informant, 4 Satyr Wayfinder, in particular because you could go Eldritch Evolution on them. That helps you find the Greasefang for the combo as well. We also just have the fair beatdown version with Eska's Chariot to just make copies. It's another clean way to just, when you're not necessarily graveyard comboing, you have to deal with a vehicle that just makes more creatures in that respect. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing in Explore, what you've been enjoying, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.